We're back with another conversation with Coach as we tackle diversity. And we got a young man with us who I just said his name's Andrew, but I'll let him introduce himself here in a second. Just to talk about his experiences as he's gone through lacrosse on the field and off the field, being an Asian American. But if you could go ahead and introduce yourself, Andrew, that would be great.
So my name's Andrew Dappen. I'm a senior here. I'm a business administration major, and like you said, I'm Asian American.
Got it. So I guess as we start off all these, where and when did you start playing lacrosse? I know you're from Northern Virginia, but is that where you started, and how did you find lacrosse?
So yeah, I started in around 7th grade when I started. So I played soccer up until then. So my older brother, he started about 2 years before I did. He just picked up the sport just because he didn't like soccer that much. So he picked up the sport. My dad helped coach him because my dad played lacrosse back in high school too. So he had some familiarity with the sport as well. So he helped coach my older brother. And then when I had about 7th grade, I just got bored playing soccer. I was like, lacrosse looks fun, and give it a whirl. And I've been playing it since then.
And all this time was all in Northern Virginia?
Yes, it was.
All right, always in the same place. Well, that's cool. So 7th grade you started. So I guess the next part is we kind of dive in, where you're from and how long you've been playing. Have you ever felt some discrimination, intentional or unintentionally, within the sport or around the sport, being travel or high school or even, we'll say here at Coke?
Unfortunately, I have. It happens, unfortunately, in today's age. I've been called things, obviously, like you think most Asians don't play a sport, let alone lacrosse. So, obviously, you get the thing of you should be playing like sport, you should be doing schoolwork, stuff like that, studying and whatnot. I've been called nicknames. I even have nicknames here that aren't necessarily politically correct, but I've grown up where call me whatever, I don't care. Like words are words. Like I don't care. But yeah, unfortunately, I have been discriminated and been called things that aren't necessarily nice.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and some of those kind of sounds like intentional and unintentional.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know, like, kind of giving your family and your like real, just kind of go around, like go with the flow mentality. It's easy, and I was in your same boat, being kind of a mixed kid who's playing lacrosse. We look a little different in the locker room. It's easier sometimes to laugh things off, but I think as like in now today's age, like it's important for everyone around us, for those that don't look like your normal lacrosse locker room, to for us to not to feel more comfortable just not laughing it off. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
And especially with close friends, it's easier to have like that talk or that conversation,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
you and I had at the field before. So I guess kind of along the same lines, given the age we're in now and the climate that we're in, have you felt a little bit of discrimination as far as like since COVID has hit, given your appearance? Just with some of the things that are said in media and the way that the virus is portrayed. Have you felt any of that?
Not me personally, but like for my race, I feel like I have because when the whole coronavirus started, it started out of China, and everyone assumed anyone that was Asian was Chinese, and obviously I'm not Chinese, I'm Korean. So it's like that's kind of like offensive to me. Like you're calling me like not my own race, not my true race. So it's like that I felt a little discriminated about. So not me personally, but like as like a race, I felt discriminated against.
I was gonna say, I know like you're in the deep south, and there's obviously how people have their own views in this area, and they're kind of swayed one way or another. Have you felt like, and then you kind of answered it, but like I was kind of worried about maybe tension in town for you, just kind of given the climate and where we're from. But
Not necessarily. I'm not too dark with skin, so I kind of look like I'm white. So I don't necessarily stick out like I'm like fully Asian. So I don't necessarily be looked off as I'm Asian. I look more white. I have lighter skin tone, so that kind of helps. So like in town, I don't really feel hated towards because I'm Asian. So
good. All right. Well, and we've been locked down for a little bit too, so it's kind
yeah,
of hard
yeah,
to get
exactly. I
people to
don't
get
see
out
anyone.
in
Yeah,
this town.
absolutely.
And then I guess the other part that we'll kind of hit on, and it goes back to what we said, and it's the story that you and I talk about. Like I know you've had a couple of different nicknames that you spoke about within our team, which I think we both laughed off.
Mhm.
Now I think as we grow, like those are opportunities where you just knowing your personality, you weren't offended by it. But that same conversation with someone who maybe isn't as close to you or your teammates isn't, or nickname isn't acceptable. And I think like we continue just to kind of talk about growth, and I think that's where you can help your teammates. 'Cause
Absolutely. Yeah.
not everyone's going to be as open and as awesome as you and your family are with just kind of accepting the Asian Americans and some of the typical views that come with it. So I think that's a huge thing for you growth wise, but also too, I think it allows you to have a voice, which you
Yeah.
do. Um, so I guess the last part here is what is something that you've learned about yourself over the past, we'll say 8 months as all this stuff is being kind of put on the front burner.
So for me personally, like I've grown up, my parents have raised me as I don't see color. Like everyone's the same. But I've come to realize like not everyone think has been raised that way or sees that way. So I got to understand that some people like may not have the same viewpoint. So like you can't say certain things to certain people. Just be more conscious of like how they were raised and like how what some things I could say could offend them or like upset them, and like just learn from that.
I think that statement you make there is, it sounds great to say I don't see color, but it's important that we do see color.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah,
And that's what you just said it to a T. Like that was a great way to be like a foundation. But now as you get older and you start to mature and grow, like color is important. For us, it helps our locker room. It makes our locker room a healthy, safe environment. It makes our field space healthy, safe environment as well, and it allows you to experience other cultures. Meanwhile, I kind of personally wish that our team would dive more into your culture because I think that like there's I've only known one other closely known one other Asian American, and he played at Queens, and so I think there's like definitely a community a lot like the brown community that plays lacrosse. That's the Asian community that is misrepresented and underrepresented, and so I think that you have an awesome platform for your community because there's a bunch of good Asian American lacrosse players out there. I just haven't come in contact with them, and so just continue to have like a safe space for everyone, so you don't have to face those stereotypical jokes in a locker room or on a campus. So um, if there's one thing, this one wasn't on there. Sorry, on a pre-list of questions. If there's some advice you would give to the next Asian American coming up, like what would it be? All right,
um,
from a lacrosse perspective.
just ignore like what opponents or like other fans will say. Just don't let it get in your head. Just tune stuff out. Like just focus on playing the game. Don't worry about other people. Just do what you do and go from there. Like don't worry about other people say. So
Yeah, it's kind of the sticks and stones thing, right?
yeah, exactly.
So, well, Andrew, short and sweet. I appreciate your time. Like we said, kind of before we started recording, um, great conversation. If it helps our team, it helps our locker room. That's one thing. But if it helps some young guy along the way, just to kind of hear your story and the things you've gone through and where you're at right now as a senior, about ready to graduate, basically as a 4-year starter, it's the sky's the limit. So I appreciate everything. Thank you so much for your time, and we will be in touch. All right.
So thank you, coach.
Thank you, man. I'll talk with you.
That absolutely.